Hello there, YouTubers. Charles here again, and I'm continuing my Minecart transport stations from A to Z video series here. And in this video, I'll be showing off two-way, three-way, and four-way stations or station switches. Just a reminder, most of my builds or most of my stations that I'm showing off are intended to work with rails that carry travel in two directions. But most of them can be modified to work with having separate, separate traffic, so that cars only travel one way on each track. So let's get right into it here. I have fixed up all the problems I had with the last video. You'll see in a later video some of the things I show off only will work in the new snapshots that are leading up to 1.8. So I had ported this map over to 1.8, and when I ported it back, I didn't realize that a whole bunch, seemingly anything that held items, got cleared. So I fixed that, and I'll have a download for this map for both 1.7.4 and the 1.8 pre-releases, and it will work fine for you. So here's my first two-way station that I'm going to show off, and this is what I like to call just a valley station, because you got a little valley down here. It's really simple. If you want to go to the right, put the cart on the left, get in, and press the button. And I'll demonstrate from out here so you can see what happens. The cart goes like that. And obviously if you want to go to the left, put the cart down on the right, and go. And obviously, if you're coming in, you get stopped on the hill here, and you can just press the button to keep going. Keep pressing the wrong button to get off. Now, you really don't need two high hill like I have here, but I like to use a two high hill. I don't know if it's still the case, but it used to be the case in older versions that if you were coming down a long hill and traveling basically at max speed, you could possibly skip over one powered track, which acts as a brake, and you would wind up down in the flat part here. And obviously if you're in the flat part and you press the button, you don't go anywhere. So I like to put two. It's generally not necessary, unless the cart is at max speed and has been for a while, and you've had a lot of boosters, you will be stopped on the first. So you could actually just build this. Needs to be one more out. You can build it something like that with a button there, and that works. Another way you could build this is you could move the button back one if you feel it's too close, and then just put a dot of redstone there, and that works too. If you're really low on gold, you can actually get a detector rail and have a detector rail in the center. If you're doing that, you need to power these a bit differently. Something like that. But that saves you the rail in the center, and obviously you can do that on this version too. And basically, really, actually you don't even need that. If you're powering it like that, you can just go like that. With stone buttons and with two, well, let's demonstrate here. If you have a stone button, it may not last long enough. Although I know they did change the timing, but I'm talking like back from 1.4. Yeah, it just barely did. I think they extended it the time the stone buttons are on to a full second. I think they might have been slightly shorter than a full second in the past. But there was at a particular time there was a chance that you would get stopped again before. But it looks like that has been changed. So that's the two-way valley station. Very similar to that is this. It's a two-way hill station. These need the sensor rail on either side. Basically, let's remove this. As you come in, the sensor rail powers the up part. The top has just a normal rail, and so you stop on the down. There's two separate buttons in this version. You can put one central button and then do like curved redstone like I did over there, but that causes you have to, well, it's a little glitch now that sometimes you sink into the carts, but you'd have to look back over your shoulder to press the button. So I kind of like this version with two buttons. And obviously you just put the cart on the side. If you want to go to the right, you put the cart on the right side if you're getting on here, and press the button. And of course, if you want to go to the left side, you put the cart on the left side and get in and push the button. Again, I'm having a little glitch where I sink into the carts more than you should. So those are pretty simple. They don't use much resources, but they're not much to look at. A lot of stuff's exposed. There's some other designs that some people may like better. These are good as kind of stations because you stop and it's easy to get in and out. We have this design here, which is kind of, well, I guess it can be used as a station, but it also works pretty well to switch your direction if you're coming along a track. But basically, in this version, let's say you're coming here along this track, and you get directed over here. You're shown, push a button to go left or right, and let's click left. And then you're sent over on the left, and obviously if I would have pushed the right, I would have been sent over here on the right. And it's all, mostly flat. And the way it works is there's a trapdoor that, no matter which button you press, opens up, and that lets the cart fall down to the track below. Meanwhile, see there's a turn over here, and if I push this button, the turn turns as well. So as I come up, I am turned into the direction I want. If you're coming along this way, we just have this little track that still routes you around to the choice position. And that's how it works. Now, this is the same thing, just kind of modified and opened up and, raised up. So instead of this having the slope up after you choose, it has the slope up before. But it's the same thing. We have a dot of redstone under each button, and that happens to power this block, which is what the trapdoor is attached to. So no matter which one you press, this block gets powered, and it opens the trapdoor. And the only difference between these is now this one has the turn is set up a little differently so that the right hand side is hooked up. The difference is that this one has a torch under here, which you can actually drop down here to see. And so that's why it turns to the right normally, where this one turns to the left normally. So this one, the left button only opens the trapdoor, whereas the right button not only opens the trapdoor, but then uses this repeater to power this bit of redstone, which changes the turn here, which I will show now. And the button stays pressed long enough so the button is still pressed as you pass. So that's these. Not really. They can be used as stations. You can decide to get out here and then break and pick up your cart. But they're kind of better as maybe middle of the line, or if you're coming this way, you could have another track this way, and which do you want to go to the left or to the right? This is something. There's a few variations. This is something I just threw together. I've never actually used something like this. But this is more of a station or a place to decide where to go. Basically, there's pistons that kind of hold this one track hostage. If you're here, you can't get out. But we have sensor rails here, so if you're coming in... Well, I was coming in pretty slow. Let's try that again. There we go. So the sensor rail pulls the piston back long enough for you to get in. Then you have right or left choice. And let's say I want to go back to the right. I forgot something. Basically, how it works is pushing either of these buttons will power this powered rail, but at the same time it will only pull back the piston on that side, so you get sent out that way. Similarly, this one will do the same thing on this side. Plus they have these sensors so that only the piston gets pulled back. If you're approaching, the powered rail does not get powered, because if it did, you'd kind of like bounce right out immediately. So the way it works is each button has a torch on the back, which then just kind of tiny torch tower up here. So basically pressing the button powers the line on the appropriate side. We have these torches that hold these pistons out, but the signal from the button will turn the torch off so the piston gets pulled back, and simultaneously it will power this center line, which powers the rail, powers the block that the powered rail is on, thereby powering the power rail. I was also able to fit in, there is a dispenser here, so if you need a cart, if you walk up, you can just press it to get a cart. And obviously you can, it's not shown here, but you can have a hopper behind it with a chest that you can, use to refill. There isn't any way to automatically collect the carts in this design, but it's relatively compact. I mean, there's some redstone behind it, but for what it does, it's decent. Obviously, you can make these lines go up higher to get out. If you want to have a walkway in here instead of having the sign, or even if you have this, you can have, if these are higher up, you can have a wider and more open station. I was just trying to route them as directly as possible. So that's this kind of two-way station here. Have one other design here, and this was actually inspired by a user named Odyssey. Where's his other designs here? And he actually has a three-way intersection that we'll be getting into in a minute. But I kind of, if you need a two-way intersection, I kind of made a smaller version. And this is all on the surface. The other one has hidden underground. But this basically will show you the basics. But By default, no matter which way you come in, you are directed to the stop. As you can see. And then there's two buttons. And no matter which one you press, the powered rail comes on. So if you press this one, the turn stays as it normally does, so you go out to the left. But if you press this button, this torch will flip the direction of that turn, and so you'll go out to the right. So that's the basics of this. And obviously a lot of this can be hidden underground. I've just have it on the surface to show how it works. So that's it for two-way stations. So now on to three-way stations. And I showed off in some of my previous videos stations that kind of look like this. I actually have three different kind of examples of it. Now, this design basically, I've been playing Minecraft, since beta, and maybe even alpha. Back when there was booster carts, and there wasn't any powered rails. And at that point, the turns still worked with Redstone. But I basically made some designs and came up with the idea that the best way to make these turn tracks or switch tracks is to only have the minecart going over them while you were exiting, and to avoid them because they could be in either position, which made the logic a lot harder. So because I didn't know if you'd go left or right, obvious choice is just to avoid it and be routed around, but yet still routed to the choice area. And then in this case, you can see we have 1, 2, and 3, and we got buttons 1, 2, and 3. And so if you put a cart here, that goes out 1. Now obviously, I might not have mentioned this in the basic section, but carts without riders obviously slow down a lot faster than carts with riders. So even though that looked slow and like it was just making it, if there was a rider, it would have no problem. So now we can try 2. You can see that turn, send, just barely long enough, but if you're riding it, you'd be clear before it turned back. And then if you press 3. So basically the way this works is there's 2 switch tracks, and for one of the buttons, in this case is button number 1, they stay in their default positions, where pressing button 2 switches the one, and pushing button 3 switches the other. So that's how you get your 3 different destinations. All the 3 designs here basically work that exact same way. The differences are slightly the layout of how I have the turns, and I tried different ways of making this switch wall. You can see this one, it's just 2 blocks wide, although it does have some redstone on the level that would be a little bit hard to hide. You could obviously hide this repeater under a block like that, but that one, that would be hard to hide. Harder to hide. And obviously this is open here, just so you can see that there's a repeater underneath here to get the power. Then the rest of the lines are all run underground here. This is obviously, well, maybe not obviously. Both of these, one is to power a powered rail, and the other is to hold a curve in the proper direction, because this curve kind of gets updated when this redstone changes, so I have the torch underneath it to keep it turned in the correct direction. Now this is basically the same layout track-wise, just rotated 90 degrees. Again, we have 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3. The track here is powered above ground, but all the rest is powered underground. This is basically the design I showed off in my earlier videos. The wall now is 3 blocks wide, but it's less complicated, and you can, except for this right here, everything can be hidden behind a wall, and you won't see it. Again, there's just you get 2 lines coming down to power the 2 switches, and it works the same way. One just goes straight through, 2 turns that switch there, and 3 turns that switch there. Again, no matter which button you press, the rail here is powered, and then potentially one of these 2 turns. This is a little, well, again, it's basically the same design again. The rails are a little more compact, but, or at least it's not as wide this way, but it is deeper by 2 tracks this way. This you can hide pretty well, except for this one spot of redstone. But I believe you can actually build this rail closer and get rid of that redstone completely, although then it makes hitting the buttons a little bit harder. You could probably also hide it underground somewhat. But these can be filled in. That, it's just there to show. But again, we got left, center, and right. And in this case, they actually match up. The leftmost button will make you go to the left, center button will make you go to the center, and the right button will make you go to the right, instead of having it be kind of the opposite order as it was in those previous. Here the left button changes that one. The center button doesn't change any of the positions, and the right button changes the right. Now, I believe this one has need of a few repeaters to delay the signal, because, as I said, this is kind of 2 blocks or three tracks further, so you do need to hold these for slightly longer than the button stays down. But that's this design. Again, these are kind of outdated. You'll see a much better design. Odyssey's design, in fact, pretty much outdates, uses less than half the tracks and about the same amount of redstone. This is also a design I showed off earlier, or in a previous video. Basically, you come in and you are only given the options so for which way you can go, instead of having 3 buttons. Like, the 3-button one is kind of nice because you can turn around and come back. If you don't think that's necessary, this design, while it looks messy here, can be half slabbed completely over. I have half slabbed this section, so only you see the 2 little dots of redstone and the rails. The rest of this I left open so you can see how it kind of works. Here is the only spot where power is kind of transferred down. You can see that this block is powered, and it transfers that power down into this line right here. So there's only 1 turn here, and depending this gets powered or not if it needs to turn. But basically, here, if you want to go forward, we can just go forward, and we'll jump over the turn. So you push the button, this gets powered, it powers. Actually, that's not necessary. Yes, it is. It's been a while since I looked at this. I should have just left it alone. Let's put it back. And yeah, it's just on 1 tick. So, this gets powered. It powers this block, which powers this redstone, which powers this, which powers the rail you're on. There's sensors, so on the other side over here, the cart will hit the sensor, which will power these rails and let you get over. So that kind of works like this. Coming back the other way, well, now if we just power this track that we're on, we'll wind up turning, and that's what actually the right button does. It does the same thing as that forward. It's the exact same circuit. It's just under there. But for forward, we need to turn this. So in addition to powering, it's got the same circuit to power here. It also sends a signal off to turn the track, and you'll see as soon as or very shortly after I press the button, the track will turn about the same time we're going. There we go. And again, we go up and over. So the way that works is, power coming off that side, powered power rails, and then we have a repeater here with a delay, so we get here before it runs out into this repeater that turns the track. Kind of the same thing happens here if we click the left, except it is sent under here through this block, as I pointed out before. So you see if I hit left, same thing happens. Oop. Shift, not inventory. In this case, it may look different because there's no straight, but it's basically the same thing. We either just power this and we will turn to the left because that's the way this turns naturally, or we need to apply power this and apply a change to the turn to go to the right. So you see right, left just goes straight. Yep. So that's how this works. A lot of repeaters though. Although it can, like I said, can be, you half slab over and looks pretty nice. However, you can do the same thing smaller with this kind of setup. This is basically the same thing, except it's a lot smaller. And the switches are kind of common. It turns out that to go left here and to go right here, for both of those, this corner doesn't need to change. So all you need to do is power the respective powered rails to get going. And the buttons are actually on the exact same block, and they're triggering the exact same line, which powers both of them. And it turns out that not only do those work that way, diagonally across, to go forward from here, you also just need to power the powered rail here. So this button and these two buttons all just power the powered rails, whereas these two buttons and this button diagonally across not only power the power rails, but they also then change the track in the center. So basically, there's 6 buttons, 2 on each of 3 sides, and they fall into 2 groups of 3. One of the groups just powers the power rails, the other group powers the power rails, and also switches the track. And it looks complicated, and it actually sort of is, but this is the one button, and this holds the other 2 buttons that just power the power rails. And this holds the 2 buttons that power the power rails and turn the track, and then there's the other block that holds the one button that powers the power rails and changes the track. So this is the the redstone that does change the track, and this is the redstone that powers the power rail. And you can see there actually we use a repeater here to make sure that if the power rail only signal gets turned on, it does not trigger the turn the track, but if the turn the track signal gets triggered, it does also power the powered rails. And we just have this to leap over the other set of redstone wire. So basically it's like one set of redstone going diagonally this way and then powering the power rails, and the other set going, sorry, not powering the power rails, powering the switch, and the other set of redstone going diagonally this way. The one goes underneath, and that powers all the power rails, and then this repeater makes sure that if the track direction is changed, the power rails also get activated. So that's how this works, and a lot less repeaters, more redstone, but it's less redstone overall, I believe, because each repeater takes 3. It's just a little complicated to try to route these without them interacting, but this is one way of doing it. I have this block here. It looks like it's not needed, but it actually is preventing that bit from connecting to that bit. Otherwise, all the blocks are either for structure or looks. So that's this 3-way station, and we have one more 3-way station, and this is kind of the one I indicated before, but this is designed by Odyssey. This is 3-way minecart intersection, and this is a really, really nice design. Basically, it uses as minimal tracks as possible. I just have these levers here to show that they are powering these powered rails. You can actually power them from underneath. It makes things a little complicated, a little more complicated underneath, but it's definitely doable. But basically, these turns are powered or unpowered as needed to have their default state with the now buttons being pressed, so that no matter which way you come in, you are directed to the stop, the unpowered stop there. And then you push a button, and in this case, the closest button makes you go all the way around and back. The second button will have you go out that way, and then the furthest button will have you go out straight. So again, there's only 2 turns. One of the buttons leaves the turns in their default position. In this case, it's the center button, which just powers this. And then the other 2 buttons are each hooked up to one of the turns to make you go out a different direction. Now you can hear there's some pistons involved with this, and well, I have the pistons over here, and let's remove that. Basically, the way it's supposed to work is you push one of these buttons, and because the button is within 2 blocks of the piston is supposed to activate and push the redstone block down, which will then, there's various bits of redstone, and when the redstone block gets next to the redstone dust, it powers it, and that's how we detect which button is pressed. Basically, how we get the signal moving all the way down, with having, you can actually completely wall this off, so it's only a single set of blocks with buttons up. But if you look, it doesn't work. If it was redstone on top of these blocks, the pistons would move down. What's actually happening is, if it was redstone on top of these blocks, not only would the redstone turn on, but it would power these blocks. And because the block changed, the piston would then detect that, oh, yeah, the redstone's on and I should be powered. Because it's just a button and the button isn't causing a block update to the block attached to the piston, the piston doesn't realize it should be powered. Now, you can use powered rails. I actually did have a powered rail back here, but it's cheaper to use activator rails. They just use one redstone torch and no gold. So obviously it's cheaper. So what happens is the button powers the block powers the activator rail. The activator rail changing state updates the piston, and then the piston notices, oh wait, there's a button 2 blocks away that should be powering me, and then it will move. So now piston moves, and we can detect that, and with the change in the redstone. So that's how these push buttons work. And then it's just a simple matter of hooking things up correctly. It's a little tight down here, but here's those 3 pistons with the redstone blocks. No matter which one moves down, this line here will be powered. And this powers this torch, which powers this torch, and that's the backer block behind the powered rail. The powered rail sits on top of this block. And so no matter which one of these moves down, this torch will come on and power the cart to move away. And then as you saw before, the center is not hooked up to anything else. The left and right buttons are. So like this button needs, well, it's normally powering this redstone. Let's break that so I can get through, which keeps this torch off so that this corner is turned the right way normally, so that the rail comes in here and goes that way. And then if you do push this button, this block moves down, which powers this obviously, and then that depowers this. So this torch turns on, which turns the turn up here from going that way to going this way. So that when you're coming this way, you'll go straight out that way. This one, on the other hand, needs to get powered when you push this button. So just like this one gets powered, the block moves down and also powers this one. And we come over here and turn off this torch. So instead of this normally turning this way, it then turns this way, which lets you come straight out across that way. So, if you still don't see what's happening, just download the map, break out a lot of these blocks, and you can actually see what happens. I'll quickly. So that one powers both. So not only does the power rail come on, but this turns, and when you push this one, it changes from powering this to powering that, and that's what changes that rail over there as well. So that's how this design works. And except for the redstone blocks, it's not very resource intensive, and it uses very few rails. It's basically the minimum rail design, and some people like that. Whereas I won't say these are minimal redstone, but it's a lot less redstone. 'Cause the blocks here use up 9 redstone for each block. So that's it for 3-way stations. I'll go on to 4-way stations. Okay, this is a 4-way station that I like to use on my servers, or I have used on my servers. I showed off, had a video showing off a version of this a little while ago. It was up on pedestals then, raised up. This is it, just on the ground. It's a 4-way station, and it uses 2 levers to control switch tracks. It does this because levers hold their state, and basically you have 4 entrances and exits. They're dual purpose around the outside. If you come in, you are directed around the outside, This is kind of slow, but if you come in at a decent speed, you make it no problem. Obviously, we made it no problem here. And you're presented with two levers, and you're shown if you want to go to exit 1, you set it to 2A. You want to go to exit 2 or 3, you know, there's basically this lever is the 1, 2 lever. This lever is the A, B lever. You know, so if you want to go back to exit 1, set this to 2, set this to A. You push the button to go, and away you go. It did for a second there render me in the corner, but that's just because coming around these corners, the game kind of thinks you're in the wall for a bit. You don't get hurt, it's just a little rendering issue. But basically, the way this works is there's 2 levels of switch tracks. So the one switch track is right here, and it's controlled by this lever. And then that track there and that track there are the other 2 switch tracks. You see that's back, and that one is back, and flipping it, that's forward, and this one is forward. So the way it works is the button powers this torch, which powers that torch, which will power the power rail here. This lever indirectly controls that torch. Basically, there's a torch on the back of the block, which the lever directly controls. Then this torch powers that torch, which changes the direction of this track. Kind of the same thing happens here, but instead of going back, it goes off to the side. This lever changes this torch, which changes that torch, and it also, at the same time, comes over and around here and changes that torch. So that's how this works. It's relatively simple. I have the switch tracks pretty much as close as I can make them, and it's relatively compact. Really, this ring of track is the border. I believe it's 9 wide by 8 deep, and it's was it like 5 blocks? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 technically counting here, so 6 blocks tall. But a few people get confused by the levers. At least the first time, they have to be shown how to use it. So I actually came up with a push button version of this. It's a little bit bigger, but here it is. You got 1, 2, 3, and 4, and well, again, they're kind of scrambled up. You got 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's a little wider, but kind of works the same way. Well, in a similar fashion. Pressing any of the buttons will power the powered rail here. But it will also switch the tracks. The way that works is, in addition to powering the rail, pushing any button on this side, so that's 1 or 2, will change. This is the primary switch track. This is one of the secondary switch tracks, and this is the other. So pushing a button on this side, I can stand here and show you. There's a secondary track there. You see that's changed, and the same thing for that button. So pushing 1 or 2 will change the secondary track. Pushing 2 or 3, so the left side will switch the 1. The far side will switch the main primary track there. And so button 1 switches the secondary only. Button 4 switches nothing. Button 3 switches the primary only. And button 2 switches both the secondary and the primary switch tracks, giving you the 4 different options. And with wooden buttons, the buttons are held long enough so you do get past the switches before the reset. If you had stone buttons, you would need to add a bunch of repeaters in here. So the way this works is pressing 1 or 2, besides powering the booster, comes through this repeater here. There is a delay, so you get through, but it changes the state of this torch, and then the power comes up and over, and changes the state of that torch. So that changes both secondaries. To switch the primaries, pushing these buttons flip these torches, which flip those torches, which power that block, which this torch is on, which then powers this torch, and changes the primary there. So it's a little convoluted. It's a bit bigger, but you wind up with a push button system. Yep. There we go. And you can see it works pretty good. So that's the push button version of this. I do have, well, this kind of design is based off of an older design, and I'll show you that quickly now. That's all the way over here. Again, this is, one button and 2 levers. But it's laid out differently. It takes up more room, but the advantage of this is that your exits are in 4 directions and they're directly across from each other. See, these straight line here. These are a straight line here. So if you have one existing line at a level and then you're making another line at the same level and you want to cross it and you decide, hey, let's put a little station in here so you can decide which way to go. This will let you go straight. Well, the lines can be straight and you'll come into the station. Again, from what I said with the 3 ways, I had a philosophy of redirecting you around the switch tracks because we don't know what state they're in, so let's just avoid them. So no matter where you come in, you're redirected all the way around. You stop here, and you're then given your options. You can actually get off here. This can be all filled in. Normal station, I just left that. So you can get a better look at the wiring. Make your decision. Push the button which way you want to go, and you are sent off that way. Basically, this lever here controls the primary switch track, and this one controls the 2 secondary ones. The wall power here, control wall, it's nice and narrow. There's 1 bit of redstone. This button directly powers that redstone to make you go. Both levers work the same way in that they have a torch on the back. The torch powers or unpowers a spot of redstone, which then the repeater powers this block, which gets transmitted down to this redstone. And so that this line powers this primary torch. The other line comes over here, powers the 1 secondary, and then we use the power from this torch to power this one, or unpower it as maybe. So you can see those 2 torches will always be opposite. If I flip this, you see they're opposite. But that kind of causes, at least in this build, in this orientation, these 2 secondaries to kind of always turn in the same clockwise direction. So right now they're kind of both turning clockwise, and now they're both turning anti-clockwise. So yeah, the nice thing about this design, again, is this straight. You can have basically 2 straight lines that cross and then put this in place. The kind of downside is it's a bit bigger, especially with this over to the side here, than kind of the last 2 lever version that I showed off. And the other kind of, not really a downside, but a difference is, if you come in here, you got to turn to your side to control the levers. Whereas, and I'll quickly go back over here, this design, you come in and you're kind of stopped looking directly at the levers and which way you have to go with the button to go straight in front of you. And this design, it's a little taller, but I think it's a slightly more compact. But this, basically does not have the crossing. These two are straight, but the other two ways both come off the same way. So it's not quite as convenient, depending on how your tracks are crossing. Now, based off of this design, it's not really a 2, 3, or 4-way design, but it's basically just an extension of this design. I made an 8-way station using this design, and I'll show that off quickly right now. I do have other more way stations, but they'll be in the next video. So basically, this station is kind of, you got 4 ways here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you got 4 ways on this side, and they kind of redirect separately here, and these come in on the other side, obviously. If there was a person in the cart, it had no problem. But you're stopped here. I'm always sinking into these carts. It takes like a minute before I pop back. But basically, you have 3 levers on this side: A, B, 1, 2, X, and Y. You got your go button on this side, and I have a quick little signs explaining which exit and how you need to set the levers. So if you're set for A, 1, and X, which is all up, you'll go out exit number 7. A1 and Y, you'll go out exit number 6. So I got, they're just numbered around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Obviously, you'd want better signage, saying like Bob's Place, Bill's Place, Spawn, Mine, whatever. But the way this works is you have 3 levers and you have 3 sets of turn tracks here. The stone block here is the primary turn track, and that's actually controlled by this middle lever. The nether brick is the secondary turn track, and that's controlled by this lever, and there's another one right there that's also turned by it. Let's see that there. And then we have 4 tertiary turn tracks that are on the lapis blocks, and that is controlled by that first lever. And so this lever that controls the blue blocks has a torch on the back, and that powers this line here, which controls these 2 torches, and then comes around, controls those 2 torches. So you can see if I flip this, that goes off, and these 2 torches are now on. The center track controls a primary switch there, and that controls this torch, which powers that dot of redstone, which then through this repeater goes underground and powers that line to turn this torch, which is right under this block. That's the only bit that's underground. And this is a half slab here specifically because half slabs don't transmit power, so this torch won't affect the power of this line up above, as you can see right now. Finally, this switch, or this lever, controls this torch, which first directly changes that spot, but also powers this line, which comes over here and changes this torch, which changes the other one. And in this case, they're actually opposites, where you can see the blue line. All the torches for the blue line are either on or off at the same time. It doesn't really make any difference that these are opposites. It just affects the order that these come out to be. And if you really wanted to, you could put another torch up here to, convert it back so that they're both on or both off at the same time. But that would obviously change the order. So this is an 8-way station based off of this 4-way station concept. Not quite as straightforward. And again, there's another lever here, so it's even more confusing, naming the positions and making sure everyone is clear on how it works. So I wouldn't really recommend this, but this is a way to get an 8-way station. In later videos, I'll have 8-way and more stations that are easier to use than this. But this is just kind of an extreme edge. Making this into a 16-way station would be really kind of overkill. It would make it a lot more complicated and bigger. And there's better ways of making stations with that many number of exits, but that'll be in future videos. I do have basically two more designs to show off for 4-way, and I'll do that now. So this is an old school design, and I wouldn't recommend this at all. It's complicated, and there's any of the other designs I showed previously. Actually, I should show this off first. This is Odyssey's 3-way station extended to 4-way. Basically, there's just another button and another turn track. In this case, red is the natural exit. So none of the tracks are switched for red. So you just push the button here and go. It's got the same redstone block pistons underneath. There's just now 4 of them. This one is a little tricky in that this turn track, it takes the cart a way to get there. So even with wooden buttons that last a half second longer than stone buttons, a repeater is needed to be set on full so that turn is held long enough. In fact, an empty minecart won't cross it properly. No, it did. It barely makes it. I was actually testing before, and it didn't. Definitely, if you're in it, the cart does travel fast enough so that it isn't a problem. Bounce off. But, the other ways work just the same as the 3-way. It's basically just 3-way with just an extra button and an extra turn. But this is about as far as you can take. As I said, you already need an extra repeater on full delay so that this turn holds long enough for you to make it through. But otherwise, it's pretty identical. I just have this torch is powering a powered rail, same as with this one and that one. That's just what the extra torches are down here. Alright, back to this. This is an old design. This is basically a roundabout 4-way design. As you remember from the basics video, right now, if you were to go on here and all of these be powered, you would jump these corners and keep going straight for every corner here. But in order to do that, 2 of them have to be powered and 2 of them have to be not powered. And so that's what these torches here are doing. This design actually is naturally set up for two-way tracks. So this is like the inbound track, and this is the outbound track. The server I play on, though, doesn't get that much traffic. We do have like approximately 50 people to play, but normally there's not more than 5 or 6 on at once. So I kind of like using two-way track, or track that has two-way traffic on it, because obviously you need half as many tracks to do that, and we don't have enough people where collisions on the rail track is a problem. But obviously, if you have a higher activity server, you can easily. I mean, this is basically designed for one-way travel in each direction and having a pair of tracks. But I'll put this back for this demo. So basically, if you come in, you get boosted up here, and you are stopped. And let's say we want to go straight across. So at first, we want to go straight here, and we would have to look and see that, yes, if we push this button, we will go straight. We won't leave the roundabout, we'll stay in it. And now we get here, and now we want to leave the roundabout and head to the right. So we reach over and flip the switch, and you can see we will now turn. So we push the button, and we turn and leave. So basically, no matter which direction you come from, you come in and enter this roundabout going counterclockwise, as if you're driving on the right-hand side of the road. And you just have to look. If the lever's flipped one way, you will stay in, no matter where you are. And if the lever's flipped the other way, you will leave the roundabout, no matter where you are. So that's how this works. The only problem is, well, it's very exposed, it's not level, and you gotta keep checking, whether you need to flip the lever or not at each spot, and it takes a while. If you want to go 3/4 of the way around, you have to flip the lever twice, probably, because it will generally, when you come in, the lever will be set generally for leaving, because the last person who was in the roundabout left, as the last thing they did. So generally you'll have to flip it back straight. You'll then have to push 3 buttons to get around 3/4 of the way, or 2 of them to get around 3/4 of the way. You'll have to flip the lever and then push the button a 3rd time to leave. So that's a lot of activity you have to do, and you can see it's not the nicest looking station. So what we have over here is a design by Odyssey that basically improves and modifies this. So again, this is naturally designed for dual tracks. I have just modified it to work with single tracks, but there's how it works for dual tracks. You just build it slightly differently. I modified it so you have a single inbound and outbound track. And so basically when you come in, you stop here. Now in Odyssey's original design, he has these blocks are popped up with pistons and then go down. He uses another detector rail, and then when you push the buttons, they pop up again, so you get boosted out. It makes the design a little more complex. I just wanted to feature the simple version, but definitely watch this video if you want to make the nice version. And so there's basically 4 directions. We got the red, yellow, green, and blue, and each stop here has red, yellow, green, and blue buttons. Not necessarily in that order, because the way the buttons basically work is this button is to make an immediate right. This is to go straight ahead. This is basically go around 3/4 of the way, so you're basically making a left. And then this button is always to leave the way you came in. So if I push the blue button here, you'll see the cart will come around and go out the blue way. But if I press the green button here, the cart will go around, go out the green way, yellow, and then finally pushing the red button here, the cart will come around and go out the red way. Now obviously it works the same if there's a rider. Basically, this is the roundabout. I have this open here. You can obviously have this closed. But basically, this works on analog redstone, and I haven't really talked about that. But basically, redstone is on or off, but it's not really just on or off. There's different power levels. You can see the torch powers with power level 15, and each step of the way, power level goes down one, so it's 15, 14, 13, etc. So finally here we get 3, 2, 1, and then 0, and then obviously it stays 0 the further you go, so this is completely off. So the way this works is down here, this blue part is a kind of a circuit that detects the power level. So there's redstone under these buttons. It's only one line, and depending on which which button you press is powered 15 there. So if you push this one, it's powered 15, so the power just barely gets to the center here. So it'll be only power level 1 when it gets to the center. If you press it here, it'll be power level 4. Obviously, this is 3 and 2. So this is a special circuit here. I'll show you down here. The green line is coming in from the buttons. You can see the bottom of the buttons there. And it is exactly from that last button to here, 15 blocks away. So this will, if you press the blue button, this will be powered by exactly power level 1. So that this triggers, and these greens are latches. Greens. The orange circuit here are latches. So this will turn on, flipping the track above. If this is power level 2, though, the power level 2, this has a delay. So it takes 4 ticks for this to flip. So before that flips, or powers, I should say, powers through, the 2 is copied over here, and then power level 1 comes here or here. When this is power level 1, this gets powered, and the power comes through, and I don't know if you're familiar, but repeaters powered from the side by another repeater get locked out and won't transmit, will keep their state. And basically because this hasn't started transmitting power through yet, it won't ever until this gets unpowered. But they both get unpowered at the same time. So power won't get through here. However, so only when there's power level 1 here will this trigger this latch. Same thing here. So, the power was 2 here, it was 2 here, it drops to 1 here, so the power will get through here if you push the green button, which is the second button. Now, if you remember from here, you have to have certain directions powered and certain directions unpowered, and so this circuit here is 4-way symmetric, except for these orange parts, which is where that happens. So you can see on these two sides, the orange are simple, so we just have unpowered torches. But on these two sides, we got an extra torch in here so that these are powered, so that normally you are going around the circle. Now I said they're latches, which means, if you're not familiar with that term, once you turn it on, it won't turn off until a separate signal comes in. So you can see if I push the blue button here, that flips, but now there's no more power here, but it stays flipped until the leaving minecart crosses this signal, and that turns the latch off by powering, the detector rail is right above here, so it powers this bit of redstone, which turns the latch back off. So that's how this works. Now, this is 24 by 24, but that's really only the surface. As you can see, it's like 6 blocks now are inside. You push the button, it triggers, like I said before. It also turns off this torch, which turns on that torch, which is what sends you on your way. As I said, Odyssey's design in his video, he has a piston mechanism here to pop that up. And it fits in here, but I'd just like to show off the simple version. Let's see if I push that. Yeah, you can see the lockout was happening, and then this one flipped, and then as you come around and leave, it will flip back. So that's basically all the four-way designs that I have. I do have more than four-way designs, and I'll leave them for the next video. I hope to see you then. Next video, I'll go into selector or push button switches, or push button arrays, I should say, selector switches. I do have a few more four-way designs, but they're what I term exotic, or they rely on, I wouldn't say strange mechanics, but they're basically designs that you wouldn't normally want to use. But I'll be showing them off in the next video. So I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.